Do you dream of writing a novel? When you feel the urgency to write a novel, you aren't making it up. When that urgency won't let go, there's a reason. Turn your readers into raving fans. Reveal the power of your voice and your story. Writing is an act of courage, and you have what it takes. How to Write a Novel That Sells by Lana McAra will take you across the finish line. Visit howtowriteanovelthatsells.net and take that powerful next step now.
Welcome to the Fiction Writers Podcast with Lana McAra, where you will discover tips, tricks, and ideas for fiction that is #unputdownable. Here you'll find new energy, new perspectives, new resources, and new ideas that will spark your creativity into a blaze of brilliance. It's easier than you think. Be sure you visit our website at www.fictionwriterspodcast.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now, get out your notebook, tune in, and let's get started.
Have you ever thought about being an undercover agent or tracking down missing people? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about today. My name is Lana McAra, and welcome to the Fiction Writers Podcast. Tips, tricks, and ideas for fiction that is #unputdownable. Today, I'm delighted to welcome to the podcast George Cramer. George is an enrolled descendant of the Karuk tribe of California. He enjoyed a 40-year investigative career in law enforcement and private and corporate investigations. That is interesting. He attended the Institute of American Indian Arts, earning a degree of fine arts creative writing in fiction. As a licensed private investigator, George conducts thousands of investigations throughout the Americas and Asia. He kept his investigative skills honed by volunteering as a missing person investigator with a Northern California Police Department, where he became keenly aware of missing and murdered Indigenous women, MMIW. Welcome, George.
Good morning.
I am so excited to have you with us today because what you do and have done in your life is so fascinating. This is the stuff that kids like dream of when they're trying to figure out what do I want to be when I grow up. So tell us a little bit about your background and that phase of your life when you were doing the investigative work.
Well, I was a young married man when I got inducted, and after the Navy offered early outs, 90 days in order to become a police officer. So I became a police officer in San Leandro, California, and I was there for 16 years. And I retired on account of, I usually say stupidity, but that fits. I worked a lot of undercover work and served a lot of search warrants. And I got a name of one Cramer because I could kick indoors so well. That was long before they started using battering rams. So when I retired, I went into corporate investigations for a little while in the banking industry. And then a good friend of mine offered me 50% ownership in a private investigations firm. So I gave that a try. And about the same time, I inherited a little bit of money. And 6 months later, I was that much money in the hole. So when you're thinking about being a PI, it can be a slow start. I was first licensed in California in 1986, in Arizona in 1999. Did a lot of different things. One thing we did was, I mentioned domestics because people are always asking about that. And your clients are always also your antagonists because they want results in 30 seconds and you're not ready to do that. I did have one interesting case. A woman came in and she was just really upset that she thought her husband was cheating on her and could we investigate it? So I said, sure. And she went back to work and she told us where her husband worked and what time he got off. So I followed him to a bowling alley, and a young lady joined him, and I stood about 5 feet away, videotaping them making out. Interesting thing is, what I called the client the same day, and she was very happy. She didn't want to see the video, which sometimes the clients don't. They just want to know what happened. Well, about a month later, she's back in. And I said, "What's wrong?" She says, "Well, I confronted, my husband, and he promised me it'd never happen again. So I didn't put him out. But I'm pretty sure he's doing it again, so I want to hire you again." And of course, we got a video of him again and told her not to come back. But you mentioned earlier the undercover. When I was doing undercover work at the police department, it was very rarely long-term, except with one informant who introduced me into an outlaw motorcycle gang, name removed. And I made some buys and met some of them. And one evening I went over to her house to get recover some dope that she had bought. And there were 5 members of the gang there celebrating her birthday. So I joined the group, and I was shaking inside, but not outside, because I had arrested one of them before.
Yeah. And he didn't recognize you?
Nah. Yeah, it's kind of situational, There's a bar in town owned by a judge whose bartender was dealing drugs. And I went in and I figured I would never get any drugs off him because I'd arrested him also. Ultimately, I arrested him. We closed down the bar for 90 days. There were 3 or 4 times that I've bought drugs from people who I'd arrested. I guess it's situational. I was sitting on the floor rolling joints with the guy, and he kept telling me, "Man, I know you from somewhere." Yeah. So I said, "You ever do any time at a little Greystone, which was the maximum security at the sheriff's office?" And he says, "Yeah, that might be it." And we were off and running.
Yeah. People don't remember very well. They just don't. Yeah, I've discovered that as well, that they just don't remember. And I don't remember. I'm not trained to remember. So, yeah. We take ourselves so seriously when actually the public at large doesn't even have a clue.
Right.
So you were, tell us a little bit about the missing persons part of what you did.
Okay. I volunteered at a Northern California police department, and I volunteered there for about 5 years up until just before COVID. And I started out working on old cases so we could clear them out of the books. Then I was invited to do some help on a couple of missing persons cases, and I found the people pretty rapidly because nobody had worked them. Actually, it's a missing persons is a shameful investigation throughout the country, I believe, for most places. Because what happens is you take a missing persons report, first 24 hours, everybody's turning and burning. And then the report's filed. It's assigned to an investigator, and not necessarily somebody who's familiar with the missing persons. And then once a year, the unit secretary gets a letter from NCIC, said, what are you doing on this? And they send the letter out, which half the time comes back unopened. And that's it for the next year. So when I got in there were, a lot of low-hanging fruit. Like one lady who had been missing for 17 years, I found her living in a assisted home across the street from the police station.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, yes. But sadly, I had cases where usually a young woman or an old person with Alzheimer's that would go for a walk or go to this grocery store and never seen again. And these are not people coming from necessarily an upset domestic issue. Like I remember one young lady, she'd come over from the Philippines to visit, and her flight was scheduled for the next day. She went down to the corner store, and we never saw her again. There are, and many officers don't know of a NAMUS, Name Us. It's a government program through a college labs that you could enter all kinds of information on missing persons, and it's nationwide. Well, I found out that there was only one person at my department that had ever even heard of it. So I arranged for a NAMUS representative in a state a missing persons group to come in and do a presentation. We had 20 some odd people from my department and another 20 from all over Northern California. Well, it didn't do much. And I remember one case that really upset me. And I'm going to tell you that most of the cases where there were unsolved, the higher percentage were women of minority races. Anyway, this woman had a very rough marriage, domestic violence, was divorced. And one Friday night, she told her roommate, I'm going to this party at this town across the bay, and my ex is going to be there, but I don't think it'd be a problem. Well, she went to the party. She left with her ex and was never seen again. 10 years later, a skull was found in Bay Marsh, and from DNA, it was established as her, but the body was never found. This is going to be trouble. 3 agencies were actually involved. Mine, a big city police department, and the county sheriff's office. And and it was a murder. There's no doubt about it. I could not get any of them to open a murder investigation or follow up on this. That was about the worst. And that's when I started learning about missing and murdered Indigenous women.
Yes, and at an organization I belonged to, we had a guest speaker who was from an organization just for missing persons, but it's civilians. It's not law enforcement. It's just people helping other people whose loved ones have disappeared. And that's, I guess, a nonprofit organization. So there is more awareness about it, but, I'd just like to encourage our listeners, if you are a family member of somebody who's disappeared, you can't let up. You need to keep talking, keep calling, keep pushing to find answers, because if you don't, it's liable to be just put aside in a file somewhere.
Yeah. No, a little pit for NAMA, NAMUS. Any citizen can go in there, especially if they're a relative, and open up a file and add to it. You won't see what was put in by the government normally, but you can put a great deal of information there to help the investigators. You can arrange for dental records, photographs, biographical information, tattoos. Anyway, I hope you all listen to what Lana said.
Well, I also would encourage you, if you write mysteries like I do, use this information, because it's really good material for your own research. If you are looking to write a book about a missing person and what would be the steps to investigating this, it's called NAMUS, NAMUS. Is that NAMUS.org? .com.org, or do you know?
Honestly, I'm drawing a blank right now because I had it and I just clicked on it and it opened up and I never paid attention after. I apologize.
I'm sure Dr. Google will come up with it if you do a little bit of research. This is so fascinating. I just want to keep talking about about this because this is my bailiwick here. So what caused you to shift then from doing that investigative work to actually starting to write fiction?
Well, I had one of the greatest jobs in the world. I managed investigations and security for a international communication company, and I got to travel places like China and other places. It got paid more than I was worth, but we got bought out by a giant company who wanted our patents. So I started looking for another job. I was 68 and I was in no mood to quit work. And I learned all about ageism, and I really won't be too much up on it. But I was also a commissioner on the Parks and Community Service organization in my city. And I swore I would never go in a senior center, but they offered a class on writing. And I figured, well, maybe this will help me with my resume. Well, I went in and it was a class on fiction writing. And by the third session, I had quit looking for work because I knew I wanted to write for the rest of my life. And I wanted it to be fiction.
What a great story. And you've got so much material to draw from. Wow. Yeah. So that was that like a free class at the community center, or was it something that you enrolled in?
You enrolled in, it was like $40 for a semester.
Okay. And was it a creative writing class, like they taught you about plot structure and characters and that kind of thing?
To be honest with you, it was fairly superficial, but it introduced you to writing.
Mm-hmm.
And they had exercises. And one of the exercises that really locked me in, I'd started writing a book where I was the protagonist, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
30,000 words in it was crap and was getting boring. Well, in this assignment, the instructor passed out pictures to everybody, just random. They were all different. And the assignment was to take 15 minutes and describe the setting. Well, I looked at this picture of two girls staring up at the Mona Lisa, and I forgot all about the setting. I knew I was going to write that book. And I'm a pantser, but in 15 minutes, I had an outline, including the ending. And I invested 8 years in that bloody picture.
Wow. So you have a book. I remember the cover of it with two girls sitting in a museum looking at the Mona Lisa. What's the title of that book?
The Mona Lisa Sisters.
Okay. That sounds really fascinating. It's so interesting because I was an English minor and an education major in college. And so I was an English teacher, technically speaking. I taught English 1 year. One did me for life. So I had that background, but I never really liked writing. I liked the grammar. I can diagram the heck out of a sentence. I just like the structure of it and drawing the lines and seeing that. But it never occurred to me that I could write. I loved reading. I was a voracious reader. But it never occurred to me that I would like to write. I hated my college papers. I despised college papers. So I took a course, and just like what you said, the exercises and opening the creativity of it stimulated a part of me that I had never explored before. And little did I know that just those few simple things were going to launch me into a full-blown career for the rest of my life. So opening to new things is so important at any stage of the game. Doesn't, you could have said, well, I'm retired. I'm not going to take a class. Why would I want to? Let me just sit here and drink beer and watch TV. But you didn't.
No. It actually, and I said the class was superficial. And I realized I need to get some more education on this. So I actually went to two schools. First, I went to the local community college and started taking English classes. Now, when I was avoiding the draft, I just got D's and everything. But when I went back, I was a straight A student and I loved it. And I had this one class where they talked about Joy Harjo. She's a Native woman. And they showed a video of it, a movie, I should say. And then I was on a website and learned that she was going to be at the Institute of American Indian Arts in 4 months. So I called the Institute, enrolled online, and I was there to hear her talk. I even got to meet her and had what do you call it? Anyway, a dinner with her at a tall table. So I really started working hard. In fact, the Mona Lisa Sisters was my master's thesis. And I had a lot of fun, met some wonderful instructors. And I think it was a year after that I finally realized you got to write the end and get off this thing.
Yeah, it's so easy to spin because you can always make it better, make it better, make it better until you're sick of yourself with the whole thing. I wrote my first book for 14 years. So, I totally get it. But I was submitting to publishers because back in that time, you went traditional or you didn't do anything. And so I was getting rejection after rejection. I got 19 rejections for my first book. And I would go back to the drawing board after a few times, back to the drawing board. What did I do, wrong this time? How can I make it better? And eventually it clicked. But, I encourage people because I've heard so many people say, oh, it took me 5 years, it took me 8 years, whatever. And I'm like, hey, it took me 14 years before I saw the first word. I was 24 when I started. I was 38 when my first book was published. And I was teaching myself how to write. We have to teach ourselves how to write. Nobody can do it for us, and you're not going to get it in class. You can get some pointers in class, but there's no way to learn unless you actually do it, for yourself. So very interesting. And the first, my first protagonist was me as well. I was so tired of writing this character that was so flat, and I couldn't get her. And I said, hey, I'm just going to put myself in there. I would do. And that broke me through that. So I could then begin to empathize with my characters and try to get, them as people. And now, when I finished my first series, I grieved. I missed my people. Yeah. Have you gone through that?
Yes. And my second book, which Robbers and Cops, there were places where when I was editing or rereading it, I cried because it just hit me. And I told myself, I think you did that right. You don't, if you cry, you got some emotion in there. In my series, I don't want to lose so many people. I might have to make it longer than I planned.
Yes, I know. My first series was 4 books. And when I completed that last book, I didn't know what to do. I spent a few months between projects because I just felt so at a loss. I'd been living with those people now for about 20 years because 14 years on the first one. And then, yeah. So I just got the rights back to that series. And I tell you, getting back with them and were, going through the books and upgrading and all that. And I got a chance to hang out with them again, which was really such a blessing. So if you're listening and you think we're a little cuckoo here, because we really believe that people who aren't real are real. It's part of the life we're living here.
Yeah. Yes. And people, part of that is that non-writers find it hard to believe that we have conversations with our characters. Back thinking about one character right now, I'm kind of ready to choke up,
Mm-hmm. Yes. And sometimes they don't want to do what you want them to do. They get stubborn, argumentative.
Yeah.
What my least favorite thing is when they stop talking to you altogether. They're like, I'm out of here. I'm not talking to you anymore because you're not doing what I want. And they leave.
And it's hard to get a word on the paper then. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You're stuck. You got to go make friends again. Apologize. Yeah. So when you chose a publishing venue, what did you decide on?
Well, like you, I sent out, I didn't keep count because I didn't want to know. Query letters, probably right around what you sent. And so finally I decided to go the indie route with a small press because the small press, Russian Hill, was owned and run by a woman I know. And she had good success and her authors were happy with her. So I went with her. And I'm not artistic. So I asked around, got references for designing the book cover the way I wanted it. And I found somebody that I just love working with. She's in El Salvador. But she is just right on top. And so the book went out and it sold better than my other books, to be honest with you. I still sell a few book Mona Lisas every month. And I wish I could go in and take out half of a couple of chapters. They talk about going down the rabbit hole. I went down the rabbit hole and I fell in love with this one subject of a naval battle. And so, of course, I had to write all about it. And did nothing to advance the book.
Such a good point, because we do fall in love with our research. But the story's got to be the main focus of the book for sure. Yeah, very good point. I did a historical novel about the Scopes evolution trial in 1925, and my notes would have filled volumes. And probably 95% of the research did not go in the book.
No.
But we need it.
Yeah.
We need the background information for our own benefit.
It probably took me 10 years to learn the lesson. If it doesn't move the book forward, don't use it.
Yes, exactly. There's a book that I want to see if it's on my shelf here. I don't think it is. I think I have it out there by my desk. It's called Make Your Words Work by Gary Provost. And that book is almost like my writing Bible. It is so full. It's got chapters on different topics, but the gist of the book is take out anything that doesn't move the story forward.
Yep.
You got to be ruthless.
Yeah. I'm learning for the first time ever, I realized because of that extra stuff everywhere, I really needed a developmental editor. And so I was introduced to Elena Hartwell, and she's working on book 2. And 2 weeks after she got it, she said, she said, "I'm sending you 2 books. You really need to read them."
That's diplomatic. You read the book.
Well, she's blunt and honest. And they have, I don't like exercises, but I've been doing a chapter a day and the exercise. And I'm working on, I had started book 3. I'm using her exercises as a springboard to book 3. Of course, a lot of it's going to get thrown out, and the hard part is no editing, George, just right.
Yes. Yes. Really good advice. So that sounds like you've got a winner there, somebody to hold on to there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's terrific. So talk a little bit about your Liberty trilogy. Where did you get the idea for it?
I have a good friend whose son is named Hector Miguel Navarro, and I fell in love with that name. So I said, "That's to be my protagonist." He said, "That's good," And he wasn't always a good boy, but it turned out well. So then I'm going to write a police procedural. Where do I do this? And I thought, well, Phoenix would be a good location, except I'm not down in Phoenix very often. So I don't want to put something in and people say, "Oh, that was the wrong name, George. That street." So I created a new city, a fictitious name, New Liberty, which touched up to Phoenix. And so I make my streets, and I had so much involvement with gangs and drug dealers when I was younger. I decided that Hector's going to be kind of naive to start with. I was more than naive. And I'm going to have just 2 gangs. A Mexican gang with links to the cartels. And there used to be probably still exists, a black guerrilla family in San Quentin around that was really bad. So I didn't use those names, but those were what I worked on. And I wanted to touch on human trafficking and missing people. And I wanted Hector, because he was naive, to grow. So I put him out in the slow places, and then he was going to make sergeant. So I put him in an anti-gang unit. I tell him too much about the book. But this guy had to face all kinds of stuff. So a lot of things that I had experienced go into the book. There are some things that I didn't experience, but I know have happened that I put in the book. And when I was writing it, I know you felt this. I'd be all of a sudden I'd have an adrenaline. Oh shoot! Adrenaline. I'd have an adrenaline flush, and I'm just flying.
Yeah.
And that feeling is fantastic. So with the other books, I'm trying to get that same thing back, but I'm not. Book 1 has violence in it. Book 2 has some, and book 3 it might not be seen, but we're going to be. Hector's going to be on a task force and wind up investigating 9 missing and murdered indigenous women with a serial killer. So you're going to want that book. I have to make a comment. Other than the difference in years, 8 and 14, sounds like you and I were on the same road together. And a lot of our friends.
Yes. Yes. There's something about it that you just can't stop. You don't want to quit. And I would get disgusted and put it away and say, that's it, I'm done. And then 6 months later, it's all over the dining room table. And I didn't even think of it. I didn't make a decision. It's almost like I woke up out of a dream and there's the book on the dining room table.
Yeah. We just moved 6 months ago and downsizing. Well, my wife is always the alpha in our family, and she made sure that the house we bought had an office, and this is my office. And I go to work every morning, whether I work well or not, but she has been my supportive angel the entire time.
That is so good.
But she won't read any of my work.
Oh, really?
She says things. Go ahead.
Maybe she just doesn't want to have that conversation.
Well, she has on occasion said, listen, I already know enough about Hector. I don't have to read your book.
That is very interesting. So you have a special offer for our listeners today.
Yes. Hello, folks. If you contact me, and I'll give you some contact information, the first 10, I'll give you a choice of either the Mona Lisa Sisters or New Liberty, a Hector Navarro novel. And it's easy. If you go to my website, www.gdcramer.com, it'll open up my website. You go to the contact page, send me an email, and I will email you an audio book.
Okay, that is real audiobook.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That is great. I love audiobooks because I can listen to them when I'm driving. So C as in cat.
R-A-M-E-R.
Cramer. G. Cramer.
GD. And, you just Google George Cramer, you'll find me. Or you could go to Amazon and Google it.
George Cramer. Sure. Thank you so much, George. This has been amazing. What a great conversation we've had today.
Thank you. I've been loving
your website is going to be on the show notes also. I wanted to mention. They just have to go in the show notes and click, or underneath, if they're listening on YouTube, it'll be in the description. So, yeah. All right. Thank you so much. And thank you for being with us today. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into the Fiction Writers Podcast with Lana McAra, where we share tips, tricks, and ideas for fiction that is #unputdownable. Remember to visit our website at www.fictionwriterspodcast.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Fiction Writers Podcast.